Theater. Man, I really miss seeing you guys this week. We would do so many fun things in class, but we will catch up on all of them, I promise. And we'll just do the best we can with this for this week, okay? So I hope you've gotten a chance to maybe look at your scripts a few times this week. I'm really excited to read through all of your characterization and questionnaires to see all the thought that you've put in. Also, Gobi's here to say hello. Gobi! He's here to say hello. He likes hanging out. Okay, so today you have two videos to watch. One of them is this one, so congrats, you're already doing it. And the other one, I figured you'd probably get tired of me talking, and so we could hear someone else talk, someone who knows how to video edit and put a few graphics in there instead of just me sitting here maybe holding up sheets of paper. So in this one, I'm going to talk about setting, and I'm going to start talking about acting terms that are going to be really important for us. It's going to seem like a lot, but most of them are very kind of self-explanatory, and some of them you definitely already know, okay? So first, let's just talk about setting a little bit and how that impacts you as an actor. So, character. We talked last week about character and why it's important to know who you are. Not just who you are, but where you come from, what's your background, what's happening, like the context, and also where you are in life. So how you move, how you interact with other people, how you walk, how you talk, things like that. Now let's talk about where you are. So knowing where you are is very important in a scene. Knowing where you are, knowing who's with you, and know who you're talking to. For example, if I'm someplace cold in a scene, I'm not just going to be sitting here like this relaxed, right? Because if you're cold, you're tense, you're going to be pulled in, you're going to be noticing. Maybe you're going to be looking for a way out, right? Again, if you're really hot, we want to keep the audience knowing that, oh my gosh, it is so hot. And like, okay, we can keep going. Like, that's fine. I can say all the lines that I'm supposed to, but man, yeah, it's going to be a little harder if it's really hot in whatever scene this is. And then at the same time, if you're so tired, then maybe if it's stuffy and you're sleepy, then oh, it's going to be all the same lines, right? But how you deliver them is going to change everything. So knowing where you are. Additionally, knowing what's around you. So if you're in a very cramped space, there's a scene that I love to watch. It takes place in an elevator, a very cramped elevator. And so the actors constantly have to be moving around like this because they're very cramped, right? Totally different than if your scene's taking place on a football field. If your scene's taking place in a museum, we had a duet scene last year with Allie and Emily that was kind of probably more in a museum, and so there was constantly like the looking around and the people are staring at us, and if things got too loud then we had to quiet it back down again, right? Or maybe if you're at the big football game, hey, it might be louder, like you might get distracted from time to time. So you need to know what's going on around you to put those touches into the scene that make it more realistic. So where are you? What's it like? Think about the senses. What does it look like? What does it feel like? What does it smell like? I need to plug in my laptop or it's going to die. Um, See, that's another thing. I didn't stop with the lesson necessarily, but reacting to outside stimuli. That's going to be important for setting. Okay, so again, what can you taste anything? What can you hear? Things like that, invoking the senses. And obviously, this really all comes from essentially your imagination. And then as you practice it, as you put it in there, it becomes more real and it becomes easier and easier to implement these little things into the scene that make it more accurate. So, your work this week, most of your work, other than the beats and scoring, which we'll get to, is between you and your partner. I want you to come up with 20 adjectives that describe your location. And they don't have to be one-word adjectives. They can be phrases, they can be sentences, they can be short descriptors. But you need to come up with 20 different aspects of the setting, of everything around you. It's not all going to be in your scene. So that's where working with your partner comes in handy. You need to work together and decide what the setting of the scene is going to be like. Obviously, use the play for as much given circumstance as you can, but where the script stops, because it's inevitably not going to tell you everything, that's where you have to add to it and create your own things, okay? So between you and your partner, you need to come up with 20 adjective descriptors for what's going on in your scene, okay? So that's that. Now let's talk a little bit about terminology, okay? So as far as terminology goes, and then we'll get to something else in a moment, we're just going to fly through some terms. Again, it's going to seem like a lot. There's a list for you on Google Classroom so you can understand, maybe even follow along. But we're going to go through those. A lot of them are going to make a lot of sense to you, okay? So it's not going to be too hard. We will eventually have a quiz on some of these terms, but I guarantee you they're not going to be hard to pick up because they're going to be terms that we're using all the time in our class, okay? So we will talk about voice, we will talk about body, but let's just talk straight about basic acting terminology. Okay, so first of all, we'll start with the playwright. Who is the playwright? The playwright's the guy that wrote the show, or gal, or group of people, right? The playwright is very important because their intention is what's most important. We have to carry out their intention. We have to honor the playwright in that way. It's like the opposite of literature, where we're thinking, what could they possibly mean? Anything is right. No, we have to honor the playwright's intention, okay? Now, most plays today are written in what's called the representational style, which means they're meant to represent real life naturally. It means that basically there's little to no interaction between the actors and the audience. Now, that imaginary fourth wall, so think of a set of a house, right? The set of the house is only going to build 3 walls, here, here, and in the back. Why won't you create that closing wall? Because that would separate the actors from the audience. So that fourth wall is the division between the actors and the audience. It's invisible, but it's never broken in the representational style, right? That means we're representing life naturally. It means actors don't make eye contact with the audience. Actors don't talk to the audience. Actors don't react from the audience. The audience does not exist within the world of the play in the representational style. Now, where does the audience sit? The audience sits in what's called the house. So the house is where the audience sits. The stage is where the actors perform, okay? Now, the opposite of representational style is presentational style. Presentational style is interacting with the audience. Throughout history, even occasionally today, plays are written where the actors discuss the events on stage with the audience, right? They're interacting. That's presentational style. Now, there are numerous other types of plays, but those are the 2 broad categories, representational and presentational. Does the audience exist? No or yes, basically. Now, we talked about playwright's intent, author's intent. Now, what do you do when you have received a part in a show? Well, you have to develop who the character is, what they want, what they're doing. That's characterization. You're creating this process of developing information about a character, figuring out who they are, what makes them tick. Now, what clues can you have to figure out characterization? Well, you have what the characters in the play specifically say about that character, and you also have the subtext. The subtext is things that are implied but never said, right? Oh, no one wants to eat lunch with him. No one sits near him. Oh, you talk to him? How weird. That implies we can deduce that that guy doesn't have very many friends. Maybe they're, maybe they look a certain way. Maybe they act a certain way, right? When you look at a play and you see all of that, it doesn't specifically say those things about that character, but you can deduce that based on what's being said, yeah? So then we can also talk about a couple other types of characters. You can have a historical play or character. A historical play or character means that it talks about a specific event or person in history. Okay? It doesn't necessarily mean that the play was written a long time ago, because that's a little different. Now, if the character is from a classic play, that's going to be a play that's withstood the test of time. You can have classics as recently as the early 1900s. If they're not about historic figures, they're not historical plays, right? Historical plays are about historic figures. Classical plays are plays that have withstood the test of time. The show that our play is based off of, Antigone, that is a classical play, okay? So now let's say you're in a play. It could be historical, it could be classical, who knows? Then what you're going to do as an actor is you're going to roll score the character. This is the last process of characterization, and it helps you fill in the blanks. What you were doing, or what you were starting to do with your characterization questionnaire, was roll scoring that character. That fills in the blanks. So a lot of roll scoring comes from your imagination, right? A lot of things the playwright doesn't explicitly say, but it's important nonetheless to understand who the character is and to really bring them to life in a 3-dimensional way, yeah? Okay. So once you have discovered all that you can about an actor, there's 2 basic camps of ways to approach acting, and most people mix the 2. So the first one is emotional acting, also called method acting. Now, you might have heard good things, bad things about method acting. Method acting can be dangerous if it's taken too far or done improperly, but at its heart, method acting in its true form is not dangerous, and it simply means that you are essentially feeling the character's emotions as if you were really feeling them. So if you're on stage and your character is sad, method acting means that you are also sad, right? Or you're wondering how you would react if you were sad. And you're pulling a lot from your own emotions, from your own experiences. Then there's another camp of acting, the technical side. That's technical acting. Acting allows you to get less emotionally involved and is sometimes a healthier perspective to take depending on the hardships of the character. Technical acting, you're going to analyze the conditions, which would be the weather, time period, time of day, what's going on, the setting. You're going to analyze the obstacles, what keeps the actor from their goal or the character from their goal, and the objectives, which is what the character wants from that scene. Then a technical actor will observe other examples of characters, actors, or people who are going through similar things, add in their own special touches, and recreate their observations, right? Most people mix the two. Most people have a bit of technical elements to their character and a bit of method to their character, and that's okay. Over the course of the year, we'll be doing different exercises to practice both ways. And as we approach these characters, we are currently doing a mix of both, with the role scoring being more technical and with other things that we will do being a little bit more method. Another thing method asks is the magic if. Basically, how would you respond if you were in the character's situation, if you felt the character's emotions, if you had the character's relationships, yeah? So that's kind of the magic if that drives emotional acting, but technical acting is driven by that technique, figuring out the conditions, figuring out the obstacles, the tactics, things like that, okay? You guys are doing great. Let's keep trucking. We have a few more things to talk about. So, a couple other things. Let's say you've done all the work, you're in character, you memorized your lines, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but you're all together, so now casts have to follow a certain set of rules, etiquette, in order to function properly and all together. There are strict rules that we all need to follow so that we stay safe and so that we can have more fun and have more freedom. Never, ever, ever be late to rehearsal. Always meet deadlines, always bring your script, always bring a pencil. Never write in scripts in pen because it's almost always going to change from your initial thought, yeah? Sometimes it's a good idea to have a notepad too to take external notes if you don't want to write them all in your script. Now, off book. Off book means that you have your lines memorized. It literally means you don't need to carry your script or your book around with you anymore. So a lot of productions have specific off book dates whereafter you are not allowed to hold your script anymore. This also establishes trusts and professionalism. If you do what you say you're going to do and have your lines memorized when you're supposed to, it really shows the director that you know what you're doing, you're prepared, you're ready, and you're willing to work hard. And it makes them trust you for future roles as well, so it's very important. Backstage, which is going to be the area to the sides and behind the curtains or set, you always want to be quiet there and stay out of the way of other people, right? Unless you are walking on stage, you are not the most important person back there and you have no right to any specific spot. And so we want to be quiet, we want to be respectful backstage. Now, when you get called places, places means go to where you need to go to begin whatever's happening, whether it's your scene or your monologue or your show if you're doing a whole show. And so if you hear places, you're going to go there quickly and quietly, and you will go until you are told cut if it's a movie set, or hold very often in the live theater world. Hold is going to be what stops you. Now, speaking of directors, when you're responding to directors, or stage management, it's very important to let them know that you not only heard them, but you know what they said and you will respect it. So whenever you're given notes from a director, for example, take 5, then you would say thank you so that the director knows that you heard, and you would also say 5 so that they know you know you're only allowed to take 5 minutes. So if the director would say take 5, you would say thank you 5. If the director says places, you would say thank you places. If your stage manager says take a 10-minute break, you say thank you 10. It kind of goes from there. It's the system of respect so that everyone knows what everyone else's expectations are. Okay? You guys are doing great. We're almost done. Couple more terms that are important for you as far as being a team player. Rules that you should never do. Scene steal or upstage. This basically means someone who should not have the audience's attention takes the audience attention away from what they're supposed to be watching. So if someone's being silly or funny in the background when they're not supposed to be, that is called scene stealing or upstaging. It is very rude. And out in the professional world, it means people do not want to work with you anymore because you are a jerk. So now, how can you do that within your blocking? Well, blocking is specifically where you go, where you move to, how you move, when you move, all the walking around elements of a show. So blocking is not blocking as in I'm in the way of. Blocking is your basically set pattern when you enter, when you exit, when you stand up, when you sit down, when you walk forward, when you walk backward. A lot of that is going to be the same every single time once you develop it, yeah? But what happens if you are in someone's way? That's called covering. If you're covered by something, you can't be seen from the audience, okay? Now, when an actor moves from one area to another, we call it crossing. Doesn't matter if you're walking across the stage. If you cross from upstage, the back of the stage, to downstage in a straight line, you're still crossing, okay? So when an actor moves from one spot to another, it's called crossing. If someone moves naturally to where they can be seen to counter another actor, that's called countercross. So if someone crosses here, now they're in front of you, you might countercross just a little bit so that you're no longer blocked. Now, a few other things. Every single thing an actor does must be motivated. There must be a valid reason for every single action to be performed. If you lift your hand on stage, at some point, I hope to be in a position to ask you why. Why? Why are you walking? Why are you moving? Why are you doing that? Everything's got to be motivated. We don't want frivolous movement. That takes away from the character and reminds the audience that it's just a person carrying the action out. So everything has to be what's called motivated. Now, one thing that we do account for, even in a representational style of a play, is that there is an audience and they need to see you. So we do what's called cheating out. If I'm talking directly to another person, I might be actually facing them like this. But that closes off everybody back there. So I might cheat out instead, angle this way, still be talking to this person over here, but now everyone can see what's going on. So if I tell you to cheat out, or if anyone tells you to cheat out, that means you want to re-angle your body to open up to the audience, include them in what's going on. Now, a few other things. Stage picture. The stage picture is generally how the stage looks. If we're creating a stage picture, it means we want to make sure that things are even, things look nice. In our show, Governing Alice, with our ensemble, we're going to work a lot on stage pictures. And then lastly, there's a freeze. If you are told to freeze on stage, it is a freeze. Unless you're told soft freeze. Soft freeze means you can move a little bit, but you should be almost silent. You should never pull focus, but you can breathe. It doesn't have to be a hard freeze. Okay, so those were a lot of acting terms, and we will go over all of them. We will use all of them. Don't you worry. A few pieces of etiquette. Be focused, be prepared, be on time, be brave. In the acting world, the best thing you can be is be brave. If you're asked to try something, even if you think you're going to feel silly, even if you think it's going to be embarrassing, be brave and try it, unless it compromises your beliefs. You never have to do that. No good director will ever ask you to compromise your beliefs, and if they do so unknowingly and you talk to them about it, they should be willing to compromise. That should never happen. And then be helpful, be courteous, be aware that you are not the only person, and be your best every time, right? Be your best every time, and it'll be great, okay? So a few memorization tips as we're beginning to memorize some things. A couple different ways to do it. You could record your lines, play them back, talk through while you're listening to them. That can be helpful. If you don't like the sound of your own voice, get someone else to do it. You could write your lines into a notebook. Sometimes when you write lines, it can help you memorize them, especially if it's a smaller chunk. Use creative devices. If you always forget one line, think of a creative way to remember it. You could block out your lines. It's difficult to remember to say some things, but sometimes naturally as you're moving, your muscles go, oh, that's the line. So if you practice a line with a movement, motion, or a specific piece of blocking, that can really help you as well. And then you can also highlight. You can highlight through different things, maybe different colors. I forgot that part. I'm going to highlight it in blue so I know to look at it. Tips and tricks like that, okay? So next thing you're going to do, it's a lot of videos, but you're going to watch a video on how to block, how to add beats, how to add scoring, and how to block. From there, you can start messing around with some of the beats and scoring. If you need a tactics and objectives list, I have a long one attached for you. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to email me. I know this was a long video, but hopefully you learned some things out of it. Feel free to make a copy of the Google Doc to take notes if you want, or we'll just talk about all of these things ad nauseum for a long time. So you do not have a quiz next week. I know your lesson plan said we've got this whole virtual week going on. None of that. Don't worry about it, okay? Just keep working on your scene, add some blocking, add some beats, add some scoring, and figure out that setting with your partner, all right? So it's been good chatting with you, and I can't wait to see you in person next week, all right? Have a great day, and I will see you later. Bye.